Hello and welcome to Coach Connect Live, everyone. My name is Eloise Aone. I am the director of Coach Connect at the Muse and Fairygodboss. And today our topic is landing a job as an ESL speaker. ESL being English as a second language. So for all of you out there whose primary language is not English, this session is for you. And as we kick off, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and what your primary language is. I have two. Mine are English and French. And if you have any other languages that you speak, let us know about those as well. If you are unfamiliar with what Coach Connect is, it is the place you can come to find a career coach to help you take that next strategic step in your career. So whether you're in a position and you're happy and you want to grow within your organization, or if you're looking for a shift in careers and you need to sit down with a coach to strategize and streamline and be successful in your job search, you can come to the Muse and to Fairygodboss and find a coach to work with. And stick around for the next half hour because at the end of today, we're going to be sharing a discount code that you can use to book your next coaching session with us. So, Christine, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Eloise. I'm very happy to be here as well.
Yeah, so you're one of our wonderful coaches at the Muse. You've been around for many years now. You have so many areas of expertise, but you particularly work with people for whom English is not a primary language. Can you introduce yourself to us so that we can get a sense of how you work and the kinds of things you focus on?
Absolutely. So I have been a communication and career coach for the last 8 years, and 3 years I've been with the Muse. I work with people to get ready for interviews, salary negotiation, job search strategy. Those are some of my most popular services. And I love seeing people thrive, getting interviews, getting job offers, reaching their goals. And it's a very fulfilling role for me. I also have always loved other cultures and languages. And so I specialize in helping people who speak English as an additional language get jobs. So that's a little about me. I also speak Spanish. I've taught English as a foreign language. I've taught a lot of business English communication skills. And so this is, certainly exciting to be talking on this topic today.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm seeing in the chat already people sharing what their primary languages are. We have some French, we have some Spanish, we have some Filipino, we have all these different languages. So really exciting to jump in with you today. And so, today's topic really is kind of how, as a person who doesn't speak English perhaps fluently, or it's not really our native language, we don't think and dream in English. How can we, what are some strategies that you can share with that population to really feel like they can drive forward in their job search and be successful in the process?
Absolutely. So honestly, a lot of the tips that I have are relevant for any job seeker in America. But for many people who have immigrated to the United States, they're not familiar with how the process works. And so I'll share a lot of tips that are relevant for everyone, as well as some that are especially relevant for somebody speaking English as an additional language. So first and foremost, it's really important to know how people get hired in the US. So employers really prefer to hire internally. They love hiring someone internally because it's a safety choice. They already know they fit into the culture and the success rate is higher. After that, they like to hire through referrals. Somebody that, within the company says, oh, they'd be great here. They'd fit in well in the culture. Sometimes they even have referral links and they get a bonus when somebody gets hired through that referral link. Employers also love to poach people who are happy in other jobs, who are thriving and they feel would be a great fit. And so for that, they often look to LinkedIn to find really great talent. After that, they look at people who are applying on, through job boards or through their website. But that's really a very difficult, challenging way to get hired. It's a competitive pool, and it's employers, like it's not their top choice. It's more like their fourth choice whenever they're looking to hire people, because that's a complete stranger and they have a ton of other competition. And it automatically makes you look a little bit desperate, because you're not being chosen, you're not being selected, chased after, referred. So there are so many other things you can be doing besides applying on job boards. Many people who have immigrated to the US that I've worked with have been really surprised by this. They've told me, I thought it was, a meritocracy. It was, you submit your resume and they go by, your qualifications. And it's really a combination of, yes, your qualifications, but also they're trying to make the most well-informed decision when they're hiring, and whenever there's a referral that comes along with that, or they have found you and they see like recommendations on your LinkedIn, that's just a safer choice. And so you want to position yourself to get some referrals and to bring people to you. So that's advice that's relevant for anyone. There's a unique piece of that that you can do that seems especially unusual for people outside the US, or maybe just getting their career started. So it's informational interviews. Sometimes these are called coffee chats. And this is where I have a lot of value to add to somebody who speaks English as an additional language, because it's about having a conversation in English. And it's a very American style conversation and networking. So what I recommend to people, when you're getting started, setting these up, is to think about where you would like to work. And the Muse has some really great resources where you can learn about potential employers and find out, if they're growing, if they're expanding, what the culture is like, read some reviews and testimonials, and that can help you narrow down your job search, which can be less overwhelming when you're targeting certain employers. And then I recommend setting up some conversations with people at those companies before you even apply there, before you even find a job opening there, but where you want to work, and set up some conversations with people. Now, here I'm going to get a little bit technical and tell you how you can use LinkedIn to find people to set those meetings up. So what I recommend for people to do is look for people with commonalities. So you can go to your you can go to the university where you graduated from, and there's an alumni tab there, and there's all sorts of filters. And you can look for people who graduated from your university who work at those companies. That's a great way. You can even filter by job title and things like that. And then right away you have something in common and you can reach out to them. Another thing you can look for is if you have second connections. LinkedIn will tell you that. And so you can then ask somebody else to introduce you to that person. And then you can reach out to them once you've had that introduction to set up a meeting. I do recommend you try to email a person directly. They're a little bit more likely to respond than if you send them a LinkedIn message, because unfortunately we all get a lot of spam or irrelevant messages. So go the extra mile and try to get their email address. If not, send them a LinkedIn message. I've had plenty of people respond to me, through LinkedIn. And then, I can, Eloise, if you think it'd be appropriate, I can also share just what some of those messages could look like.
I think that's super, super helpful. So basically what I'm hearing, Christine, is that it might feel safer or easier just to apply to positions on platforms that host job openings and job opportunities. But in fact, the best way to kind of get your foot in the door is actually through talking to someone within a target organization. It makes sense, right? You think socially, meeting friends through friends is much easier than just walking into a room and making a friend, right? Mm-hmm. Just at the most basic level, that small piece of connection creates relevancy and creates a feeling that you're already part of the family somehow. So it does make a lot of sense to do that. And I love the tip also of doing it before you apply, being incredibly proactive and get to know people within an organization. Then once you apply, I assume you can then say, oh, and I've spoken to so-and-so, or you can reach back out to them and say, hey, by the way, I've applied. Is that what you recommend as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to set these up for a few reasons. One, you want to find out what the company is like. People will share their experience with you. I've had somebody tell me, great mission, but I'm looking for a different job because the culture is toxic, and that was incredibly helpful. I've also had people tell me, great work, but no work-life balance. This is not sustainable at certain times of your life. So really helpful things. But also it can lead to a referral, like a referral link where they say, hey, you know what, you'd be great for this position, or we're going to be hiring, or if you see a job, let me know, or mention me as a reference. You'd be a great fit here. So it can lead to that. It can also lead to other introductions. This is very common where they say, I think you would be perfect at this company where I used to work at, or I know somebody you should talk to, and they can facilitate introductions. And so that's something you can ask for in that conversation as well. So many reasons, but one thing I recommend is to set up meetings with 2 people in the organization. I have 2 short, examples of why. So I told you that I found out somebody was trying to leave from the organization I thought I wanted to work at years ago. And actually, we became like really great friends. We hang out to this day, and that was 20 years ago. So I got a friendship out of it that I was totally not expecting, which was so fun. But I had spoken with somebody else at the organization, and she was more tight-lipped. She did not share that it wasn't a great culture. She was nice, but really nothing came of it. And that can happen where you find out different details from different people. Some people are going to be more willing to be forthcoming with you than others. And one of my recent clients, this one just blew my mind. She's in a tough field that's being affected heavily by AI. And she's been looking for a job for over a year. She set up informational meetings, 2 at the company, a few months after she'd applied to a job. So in the first one, it's going really well. And then she says, I did apply for a job over the summer. I never heard anything. I'm curious, whatever happened to that position? And they said, well, over 5,000 people applied, and we are still going through the applications, and we haven't set up interviews. However, you'd be great at it. You'd be great here. Why don't you reapply with my referral link? Okay, so she's like, on top of the moon. I'm pretty sure I got that idiom wrong somehow.
Over the moon? She's over the moon.
But she had another informational interview set up within a week of that. So she has that one. Amazing woman, and she's also very helpful and friendly. But then the same thing comes up where she says, I actually applied for this position. And she said, oh, that position? I was offered that, and I would never work for that manager. So 2 different perspectives, and that's why I recommend you always set up at least 2 informational interviews at a company. So this is like playing the long game. This is a long-term job search strategy that can pay off in your current job search or in the future. But it's a really important part of building your professional network, setting up these conversations.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I see 2, where my mind goes as a person looking for a job. I have 2 things that come to mind. Number 1 is that it's scary. I don't know what to say and how to approach actually even getting those informational interviews. And the second thing is, what do I actually say so that I can reach my goals, right? What is my goal in sitting down with that person? So my feeling is that the language that you're about to share on what to say when you reach out to someone will help me understand kind of how to approach these things.
Yes, absolutely. And so that will help if I give you kind of the what your approach should be whenever you are reaching out to somebody. Ideally, you want to learn about their experience at the company, like we've talked about, but also about their career. So When you're setting these up, I also recommend looking for people with a similar career path. Maybe they've made a big change. They moved from, I don't know, marketing to sales. And you want to learn from them about how they pulled that off and what they wish they would have known, those sorts of things. It could be somebody who has moved from China, where they had a career, to the United States and reestablished themselves. If you are, speaking English as an additional language, I definitely recommend you set up conversations with people who speak your native language, who have had a similar trajectory, because they're going to have lots of insights that career coaches, nobody else is going to have. Like, they're going to have some really, some gems for you. And so whenever you reach out, that's what you want to focus on, is the things that you believe they have to offer you, showing that you respect what they've accomplished, that you want to learn from them, their career journey. You are also very interested and impressed by the company, and you would like to learn more about the culture and the direction of the company. You should not mention anything about trying to get a job there, because really you're not yet. That you're having these conversations to kind of verify that this is a place that you would like to work, and then exploring opportunities from there.
I love that. So if I can just jump in quickly, it's like leading with curiosity, finding something very specific that you're curious about, that, and hopefully also shared. So that you're curious about something, but you also have a shared element. Like, we both speak French, or we both have moved to the United States in the past 10 years, or we both, are looking, or you've moved from this area to this area, and I'm looking to make that same move. I'm curious about your journey. So really leading with that curiosity, and if at all possible, also emphasize that shared experience.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what you're also going to be doing when you meet with people. Right. I will tell you, it's a little bit tricky if you can't find their email and you have just I think it's 100 characters that you can send in a message connection request. So that's your option. You need to send a connection request, and then you have a very short message. So I've prepared a really short message, and that you could tailor for your situation, but that hits on all these right points and hopefully sparks a conversation. So you could say, "Hi, Sarah, I'm Christine, also in accounting. I recently moved to Portland from Germany. I noticed you're also German and work at EY. Impressive. I'd love to learn more about your journey to establish yourself in the US and about EY. Would you be open to meeting for coffee?" And so this is, especially if you're in the same city, this is a great option. I've met people in person for coffee. A Zoom call, or, is another great option, another, virtual meeting. But this would just kickstart the conversation.
Nice. And quick question. I want to jump in. Yeah. Thank you. This is great. And then my next fear, as someone who would do this, is, what do I do next? Do I just wait for them to answer? If they don't answer, do I follow up? Like, what are your tips quickly? What are your tips and tricks on next steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they accept the request, then you can continue messaging. But if they don't respond, then you're kind of stuck. So that's why I say try to get the email address. That gives you some more options. But you want to respect the other person. And if they don't accept your request, then move on. That's okay. In my experience, the majority of people are receptive if you follow the tips I'm sharing with you. But I would say about 40% of the time, they're not going to accept the request. They're not going to follow through. But many people will. And, so that's exciting. And and then just continue that conversation from there. If you have I have longer message templates that I share with all of my clients. I have short ones to make it really easy. And then I have many questions that they could ask during those conversations to get the most out of the conversation.
Yeah, nice. This is incredibly helpful, that how tangible it is, right? And really saying to yourself, this is the long game. And it's also something that people can do today, right? We can all leave this session, figure out what our goals are, get specific on the target companies, and start making these requests today and really taking action in a job search with it sometimes feels like there's very little we can do. Once you apply, and then you just kind of have to wait, like your client waiting months later. And yet getting on that phone call with somebody within the organization really helped things move forward and gave her clarity that she needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
one thing that I want to do is really normalize these things, because, you know, when I meet with people, I often say, like, how are you approaching your job search? And they tell me, I'm applying for jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed. And one thing I want them to know is, like, there are so many different ways you can go about getting a job. And often the most rewarding and the most effective are having conversations, whether that's through these informational interviews, going to in-person networking events or career fairs and having conversations. Things sometimes move really quickly, much faster than if you're just applying online, and certainly on large job boards where it's so competitive. So that's one thing I'm wanting to help create awareness about, is just all the different things you can do in your journey to get a job in the US.
Yeah. And I was talking to another coach recently, and they were saying, success rates are not just measured in how many yeses you get, but in how many no's you get.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't get any no's, it means you're not trying. It means you're not putting yourself out there. And so this is where my mind is going when you're talking about just put yourself out there, make those connections, do the things that you need to do to energize your job search. And it might go very fast, but hopefully start counting your no's too, because those no's that you get mean that you've put yourself out there. And the other side of the coin of the no is a yes, right? So you really have both of those as an opportunity when you're putting yourself out there in this way. Do you want to share a few of the questions that you might ask and engage somebody with during those calls before we take a few questions?
Yes, absolutely. And so it's all about them, showing your curiosity about them. Here are a few of those questions. So I would love to hear about your experience with the company and how you landed here. So just easy, question just to learn about their experience. You could also say, what were the biggest challenges you faced when transitioning to the US job market? So this is somebody who's lived internationally as well. Are there any networking events, organizations, or online platforms you have found particularly useful? So sometimes there are like professional associations that people are members of, and it's kind of this built-in educational opportunity and networking opportunity. And so people in your field can tell you the types of organizations they're involved with. You could ask, what's your favorite aspect of working at the company? Try to also find out if there are negatives about the organization. So a polite way to say that would be, are there any aspects of the organization that could use some fine tuning or improvement? Or you could say, what is something the company has improved upon in the last year? You can ask about, what the company or the department is hoping to accomplish in the next year. So questions about the company, questions about the person. So if you were trying to make a career transition and they had successfully done it, definitely asking them questions about that. So how did you pull this off? What did you do? Tell me about the path. Do you recommend I get any certifications, or like looking at, knowing a few things about me? Do you think I'm ready for this? So asking those sorts of questions from the most relevant possible person. Sometimes people come to me as a career coach and ask me questions that I'm not qualified to answer,
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm not from China. I haven't pulled this off. What you're doing is ambitious, amazing. I'm here to support you, but we need to have you talk to somebody who's done this, who's the trailblazer, so that you can learn from their experience. Those are
these are great questions, right? And take them, everyone. Like write these down. The ones that feel relevant to you, write them down, jot them down, start making that list for yourself so that you can then go off and start using these. Christine, I think we have time for one or two questions specific to this group of people who might struggle with their English or not feel 100%, as I said before, they don't dream in English. What would you say to someone who says, this sounds great, but I have a really thick accent, or I make mistakes when I speak, or I don't think as quickly on my feet in English. And so I don't like networking. I feel safer just sending in an application. What would you say to someone who really has that wall that they've built up for themselves around those insecurities?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is your English does not need to be perfect to have a conversation with somebody, to build rapport, and to get a job. There are so many people in America working in the workplace, making our world a better place, and they speak English as an additional language, and you can do it too. But you do need to first give yourself permission to not speak perfectly. That's okay. That's part of the process. It's normal. But you do need to put yourself out there. And what else would I say? I've been through the process myself. I've interviewed in Spanish. I certainly was not speaking perfect Spanish, and I got an offer. Really show your enthusiasm for the job, show that you're willing to learn and work hard and learn what you don't know. But also another aspect of good communication is really staying in tune with the other person, noticing if they've lost you, like if they're not comprehending what you're saying. But sometimes people get so focused on, I need to say this, they're not giving good eye contact, and they don't notice when somebody's kind of furrowed their brow and they're a little confused. So good communication isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about being tuned in and noticing whenever there's a little bit of a hiccup and addressing it. Did I lose you? Can I clarify something? For somebody with a really thick accent to a native English person speaking ears, I do recommend you say up front, English isn't my first language. Bear with me. Let me know if I lose you. Let me know if I can clarify anything. And speak slower. Take pauses. It's actually easier to pause more than speak slower. So
yes,
try both, but at least make sure you are pausing between thoughts whenever you're making transitions. That gives the listener time to process what you're saying.
Yeah. And just to close out on that, it's all fantastic advice. The goal is to make them speak, right?
Yeah,
the goal
exactly.
is like all the questions that you just shared were so wonderful, because it's like the other person is supposed to be speaking the most, right? So that's the other thing that you can think about that comes to mind given what you've shared, and I think that's all wonderful advice. One more question specifically for job seekers who are not only whose language not only is not English, right, their first language, but also who are maybe moving to the U.S. For the first time, or have recently moved to the U.S. Are there any specialized programs or initiatives in the U.S. that support immigrant job seekers or people who are looking for their first job in the U.S. that you could recommend?
That is a great question, and there are. That's the thing about America. We have so many amazing resources. It's just finding them, and doing something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's Upwardly Global. There is International Rescue Committee. And then there are many local, state, and city programs. So I would definitely check out, Upwardly Global, International Rescue Committee, but then there are several others that are local that you can look into as well.
Yeah, nice. So you're not on your own, right? You can work with a career coach always to help you, figure out what your steps are, to strategize, to build that confidence and feel ready to jump in. But there are also all these other places you can find that support with resources and directions that you might not have known existed that you can rely on. So that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that list.
And one last thing, there are so many groups of immigrants who help out one another. So for example, I work with a group of Chinese doctors who are working to get into US medical residencies every year. And I've never seen such support. I mean, they really help each other. They give each other mock interviews. They recommend coaches for each other. And so
Yeah.
sometimes there are, communities, ethnic communities that are there to support you. And so, reach out and look to see if that exists. Yeah.
Yeah, community can be everything in moments like this, right? The job search can feel very lonely. So
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with people is key. Yeah, yeah. Well, Christine, thank you so much for walking us through all of this. You shared such tangible approaches and quelled some of the fears that I think a lot of people might have in, English native English speakers or not, in putting themselves out there and really, driving those conversations and taking the lead in their career. So, again, thank you so much. For everyone present here, if you want to book time with Christine, you can go to the Muse or to Fairygodboss and find her profile there, and use the discount code that we're putting in the chat, and also that you'll get by email after today, to book some time with her and really hone in and get specific about your specific search. So please take advantage of that. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Again, Christine, thank you, and we'll see you all next month. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Eloise. Thank you, everyone, for joining.